2 years before Captain Sonya Blade pursued Kano to Shang Tsung's private island, Major Jackson Briggs had already begun his own war against the Black Dragon. Inside the United States military, most people called him Jax. He was a seasoned Special Operations Commander assigned to a joint counterterrorism unit operating under the United States Joint Special Operations Command. He had led hostage rescues, fugitive captures, and deniable missions in places where conventional forces could not operate openly. He was known for remaining calm when plans collapsed. There was only one man who could reliably make him lose his patience. Kano. The international criminal had built the Black Dragon through arms trafficking, terrorism, smuggling, extortion, theft, and murder. His organization employed mercenaries, bomb makers, assassins, hijackers, and political extremists throughout Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and the Americas. Whenever American intelligence located one of his operations, Kano abandoned it. Whenever soldiers closed in, he slipped through another border. He usually left bodies behind him. Jax had pursued him through ports, airports, weapons markets, and safe houses. On 3 separate occasions, he had arrived less than an hour after Kano had escaped. Each time the criminal had left a message. Sometimes it was a dead informant. Sometimes it was a burning vehicle. Once, it was a photograph of Jax taken outside his own headquarters. Kano wanted the pursuit to feel personal. It had worked. Jax's reputation rested partly on his physical strength. Both of his arms had been replaced by experimental myoelectric prostheses following injuries sustained during an earlier operation. The devices were far more advanced than civilian models but remained imperfect products of late Cold War military research. Electric motors responded to muscular signals from what remained of his upper arms. Reinforced internal frames gave him an unusually powerful grip, while removable impact plates protected the mechanisms in combat. The arms could bend steel fittings, crush wooden supports, and hold weapons steady under recoil. They also had limitations. The batteries were heavy. Fine movements required concentration. Damaged wiring could render an entire hand useless. Jax received little tactile feedback and could not always judge how tightly he was holding something until it cracked. He did not depend on the prostheses to make him dangerous. His tactical judgment, field experience, and refusal to panic mattered far more. On the night Kano attacked Fort Leavenworth, none of it was enough to prevent the first bloodshed. Explosions tore through the outer wall of the United States disciplinary barracks shortly after midnight. The first blast destroyed a service gate. The second severed electrical lines and disabled exterior lights across one section of the compound. Sirens began to sound as Army corrections specialists moved toward the breach. Emergency generators brought some of the floodlights back, revealing smoke, damaged fencing, and figures moving through the opening. The soldiers expected a mass escape. Instead, they encountered a coordinated assault. Black Dragon gunmen opened fire from vehicles positioned beyond the perimeter. Other attackers used stolen military identification to enter through a maintenance area before the first explosion. Guards rushing toward the obvious breach were caught between the two groups. Through the smoke walked Kano. A metal plate covered part of his face around one eye, replacing bone and tissue destroyed years earlier. The device housed a crude optical system assembled from modified military components. It gave him limited low-light enhancement but was unreliable and easily overheated. Kano wore it as much for intimidation as for utility. He had not come to free every prisoner. He had come for 4. The first was known as No Face. Once an aviation mechanic and demolition specialist, No Face had been horribly disfigured during an explosion connected to an attempted aircraft bombing. Scar tissue covered his pale scalp and cheeks. He had no visible hair, external ears, or nose. He was a Black Dragon bomb maker and aviation terrorist who had used explosives, incendiary devices, and improvised fuel weapons against civilian and military targets. The second prisoner was Tasia. She was a Black Dragon contract killer serving multiple life sentences for murders, kidnappings, and bombings. She specialized in edged weapons, infiltration, and escape planning. Investigators believed she had arranged several prison breaks before finally being transferred into military custody. The third was Jarek. Jarek had once been Kano's protege and later the leader of a competing Black Dragon faction. He had organized the hijacking of a passenger aircraft and personally murdered an American hostage when the government refused his demands. Kano had considered killing him for challenging his authority. Instead, he had found another use for him. The last prisoner was Tremor. Tremor was a fiercely loyal Black Dragon militant wanted for bombings, kidnappings, and assassinations across Europe and the Middle East. He had trained with insurgent groups, worked as a demolition specialist, and survived several operations intended to capture him. Kano reached the detention wing while his men held off the guards. He opened 4 cells. No Face, Tasia, Jarek, and Tremor joined him without asking why he had come. They understood that Kano never did anything out of loyalty. If he had freed them, he needed them. By the time a JSOC quick reaction force reached the prison, the attackers were gone. They left behind burning vehicles, dead soldiers, damaged walls, and a trail designed to disappear among the highways beyond the base. Jax was driving when his operations officer contacted him. The woman using the call sign Gemini was a seasoned Army intelligence coordinator operating from a Special Forces command center. She managed surveillance feeds, communications intercepts, aerial reconnaissance, and information from federal agencies supporting Jax's missions. Her voice came through the secure radio.
"We have movement on the Fort Leavenworth escapees."
Jax tightened his prosthetic hand around the steering wheel.
"Where?"
"Abandoned warehouse on the south side. Local surveillance saw 5 principal subjects enter with at least 12 armed men. We have a possible match for Kano.
Possible.
We don't have a clear face. Height and movement are consistent."
For Jax, that was enough.
Who's closest?
Lieutenant Sanchez and the Marshal's tactical element.
Lieutenant Sanchez was a highly decorated Deputy United States Marshal attached to the Joint Counterterrorism Task Force. He had years of experience in hostage rescue, fugitive operations, and tactical command. Within the JSOC group, he served as Jax's senior officer during domestic captures.
"Tell Sanchez to surround the building.
Jax said.
No entry until I arrive."
Gemini relayed the command. Sanchez acknowledged almost immediately.
"We'll lock it down,"
he said over the radio.
"Nobody goes in."
Jax accelerated. For several minutes, the channel remained quiet. Then someone began shouting. Gunfire erupted over the radio. Automatic weapons echoed through the warehouse and surrounding streets. A second burst came from somewhere farther away, followed by an explosion strong enough to overload Sanchez's microphone.
"It's a trap!"
Soldier yelled. Jax heard Sanchez ordering his people back. Another explosion cut him off. There were screams, scattered shots, and the shriek of twisting metal. Then static.
"Sanchez,"
Jax said.
"Report."
No answer.
"Gemini, give me another channel."
"I'm trying."
Jax drove faster. By the time he reached the warehouse district, flames were visible above the rooftops. 2 tactical vehicles burned in the street. A third had been overturned by an explosion beneath its front axle. Bullet holes covered the surrounding walls. Jax stopped beside the wreckage and stepped out. The street smelled of fuel, rubber, and burned metal. He found the first member of Sanchez's team beside the overturned vehicle. 2 more lay near the loading entrance. A fourth had reached cover before bleeding to death behind a concrete barrier. Lieutenant Sanchez was near the warehouse door. His radio was still attached to his vest. Jax crouched beside him. Sanchez and his team had followed orders. They had established a perimeter and waited. Kano had anticipated the response. Hidden gunmen had opened fire from neighboring buildings. Explosives placed beneath abandoned vehicles had destroyed the Marshal's retreat. The warehouse had never been a temporary refuge. It was an ambush constructed for anyone who came after the fugitives. Jax looked toward the dark entrance. Kano had not merely escaped from Fort Leavenworth. He had murdered American soldiers to delay the pursuit. Jack stood before the bodies of his comrades and made himself a promise. Kano was going to pay. He checked the battery levels in his prosthetic arms, removed a carbine from one of the damaged vehicles, and entered the warehouse alone. Black Dragon gunmen waited among cargo containers, idle machinery, and elevated walkways. The lights had been disabled in most of the building. Emergency lamps cast narrow red circles across the floor, leaving deep sections of darkness between them. Jax paused inside the entrance. He listened. Boots scraped across metal above him. Someone whispered from behind a row of containers. Jax fired first. His shots drove 2 gunmen away from the upper railing. He crossed the open floor before the others could establish a clear line of fire and took cover behind an industrial press. A grenade bounced nearby. Jax caught the edge of the press with both prosthetic hands and pulled himself behind its concrete foundation as the blast sent fragments across the room. The Black Dragon soldiers had expected frightened police officers or cautious military teams advancing behind shields. They had not expected one man to attack before they were ready. Jax moved aggressively, denying them time to coordinate. He seized a gunman by his tactical vest and threw him against a cargo container. Another tried to fire at close range, but Jax trapped the barrel between the reinforced fingers of his left hand and forced it aside. The gun discharged into the floor. Jax struck the shooter with his right fist. The impact bent one of the prosthetic knuckle plates and dropped the man immediately. He took the criminal's weapon and continued. Each section of the warehouse had been prepared to slow him. Doors had been welded shut. Corridors ended at reinforced barriers. Gunmen withdrew through openings that closed behind them. The Black Dragon knew he was coming. At the upper levels, Jax entered an aircraft maintenance workshop that occupied one end of the building. Fuel drums had been stacked along the walls. Electrical cables ran across the floor toward crude detonators. No Face waited in the center of the room. Explosives covered his torso in a harness of wires, blasting caps, and taped blocks of dynamite. A portable fuel tank was strapped to his back. A hose ran beneath his arm to a shortened flamethrower nozzle. He looked less like a man preparing to escape than someone who had decided the entire building could become his weapon. No Face raised the nozzle. A stream of burning fuel crossed the room. Jax threw himself behind an engine stand as fire spread across the concrete. Heat pushed beneath his collar and reflected from the metal machinery around him. No Face began laughing. He threw an improvised incendiary grenade over the stand. Jax saw it strike the floor. He rolled away before it detonated. Flames climbed between him and the exit. No Face advanced, sweeping the flamethrower from side to side. He wanted to keep Jax beyond arm's reach, where the prostheses offered no advantage. Jax studied the fuel system. The hose feeding the nozzle passed close to No Face's right shoulder. The portable tank was protected by a steel casing, but the pressure controls remained exposed. No Face fired again. Jax raised a heavy maintenance shield and moved behind it. Burning fuel struck the metal, wrapping fire around both sides. The shield became too hot to hold. Jax released it and charged through the opening before No Face could redirect the stream. The fire caught the edge of his combat jacket. Jax drove his shoulder into No Face and forced the flamethrower upward. Burning fuel sprayed across the ceiling. No Face reached for one of the explosives on his chest. Jax caught his wrist. The motors in the prosthetic hand strained as No Face tried to pull free. Jax twisted until the wrist broke, then tore the flamethrower hose from its valve. Fuel spilled across the floor. No Face struck him with the metal nozzle and tried to reach a manual detonator. Jax drove him against the wall. One blow crushed the detonator in No Face's hand. A second broke the fuel regulator. No Face collapsed beside the burning equipment. The spilled fuel ignited. Jax turned toward the door as flames spread across the workshop. No Face did not rise again. The first escaped prisoner was dead. Jax reached the upper corridor before the workshop erupted behind him. Gemini contacted him through the radio.
Jax, intelligence has confirmed all 4 escapees are Black Dragon. No Face, Tasia, Jarek, and Tremor. Kano selected them personally.
I found no face.
Alive.
No.
Gemini was silent for a moment.
The warehouse is only one part of the operation.
He said.
Thermal imaging shows movement beneath the building. We believe the others used service passages below the foundation.
Jax found a concealed door behind an electrical panel. Beyond it, a ladder descended into darkness. He followed. The passage opened into an enormous sewer network beneath the city. The tunnels had been altered over time by municipal construction, abandoned utility projects, and illegal excavation. Black Dragon engineers had connected several sections into a hidden transportation route. Metal platforms crossed channels of dark water. Security terminals controlled locked gates and retractable bridges. Electric cables ran along walls where no city maintenance crew would have installed them. Crates of weapons, forged documents, and communications equipment sat inside dry service chambers. Black Dragon soldiers patrolled the route. Jax moved through the system, following fresh boot prints and blood left by one of the fugitives. Gunmen attacked from elevated walkways. Jax returned fire until his ammunition ran low, then closed the distance and fought with seized weapons, steel pipes, and his reinforced hands. At one locked gate, the control panel had been deliberately destroyed. Jax gripped the bars and pulled. The motors in both arms whined under the strain. One warning light flashed near his left wrist. The gate bent just far enough for him to force his way through. Beyond it, moving bridges had been retracted across a wide drainage channel. Jax located the maintenance controls, restored power, and advanced deeper. At the far end of the sewer network, smoke drifted across a circular pumping chamber. Tasia was waiting. She held a short sword in each hand. The blades had been shortened for use in confined spaces and darkened to prevent reflected light from revealing her position.
You should have waited for your soldiers,
She said.
You killed them.
Kano killed them.
You were there.
Tasia dropped a smoke grenade. The chamber vanished behind a gray cloud. Jax heard movement to his left. He turned as a blade cut across his vest. Tasia disappeared through the smoke before he could catch her. A second attack came from behind. The sword struck one of his prosthetic forearms and threw sparks from the metal plate. Jax swung toward her. She was already gone. The chamber contained several maintenance openings connected by narrow ledges. Tasia used them to move between positions, attacking through the smoke before withdrawing beyond the reach of Jax's fists. To an observer, she might have appeared to vanish and reappear. Jax understood that speed was only part of the illusion. She had prepared the room. He stopped chasing her. He listened to the pumps and learned how their mechanical rhythm concealed her footsteps. He watched the smoke near the floor, where her movement created small disruptions. Tasia appeared behind him again. This time Jax was waiting. He turned before she completed the strike and caught her wrist. Her second sword came toward his throat. Jax raised his other arm. The blade became lodged between two reinforced plates. Tasia kicked him in the knee and pulled free. She retreated into the smoke. Jax struck a pressure valve beside the main pump. Water erupted across the chamber, clearing sections of the smoke and coating the floor. Tasia attacked from the right. Her boots slipped. Jax seized her before she could recover. She drove a sword into the mechanical housing of his left arm. The blade damaged wiring and locked two fingers in place. Jax ignored the warning signal. He forced her against the pump housing, broke her grip on the remaining sword, and struck her until she stopped resisting. Tasia fell beside the drainage channel. Jax checked for a pulse. There was none. He repaired the damaged wiring as well as he could, took her access card, and continued through the tunnels. Gemini's next transmission arrived as he climbed toward street level.
We identified the destination.
He said.
The Black Dragon owns a corporate holding company downtown. Financial records say Import Consulting. Intelligence says it's their domestic headquarters.
Tasia was guarding the direct route.
That route exits beneath their parking structure.
Jax looked up the ladder.
Then that's where I'm going.
The office tower appeared respectable from the street. Its lobby contained polished stone, security guards in tailored uniforms, and a directory listing freight companies, investment firms, and international consultants. Below ground, the Black Dragon maintained an armored garage connected directly to the sewers. Jax entered through the service level. The first security team tried to trap him between two steel doors. He used Tasia's card to reopen one, then fought his way into the elevator controls. The organization had already begun evacuating. Employees burned documents in metal bins. Armed guards removed computers and communications equipment from protected offices. Senior members headed toward the roof, where a helicopter waited. Jax moved upward through the building. On the lower floors, he found records of weapons shipments concealed inside humanitarian cargo. Other files documented protection payments, extortion targets, political assassinations, and the movements of Black Dragon personnel across several continents. Kano's organization was larger than JSOC had understood. The Black Dragon was not one gang operating from a single headquarters. It was a network of independent criminal cells connected by Kano's money, weapons, and reputation. Jax copied what information he could and continued. On an executive floor, he discovered the purpose behind the prison break. Maps covered a conference table. Communications records described archaeological excavations and hidden transport routes in western China. Travel documents listed a distant location called Xinjiang, a remote ruin near Lop Nur in Xinjiang. The site contained the remains of an ancient Silk Road oasis city. Researchers had recovered fragments of manuscripts and evidence of concealed tunnels beneath the ruins. Smugglers had begun using the excavation area to hide contraband and move people beyond official border crossings. Kano was searching for something there. A file referred repeatedly to the Eye of Chitian. The documents did not explain what the eye was, but they made clear that Kano considered it valuable enough to organize the Fort Leavenworth attack and sacrifice an entire American headquarters. Jax transmitted the location and available records to Gemini. Then he heard metal cutting through the air. He moved aside. A sharpened steel boomerang struck the wall and curved across the rooftop before returning toward the man who had thrown it. Jarek caught the weapon by its protected grip. He stood between Jax and the helicopter. The former Black Dragon faction leader wore 2 additional throwing blades across his back. Each had been balanced for short-distance use. They would not return reliably like toys thrown in open fields, but Jarek had trained himself to predict their path across enclosed spaces and use walls, rails, and structures to redirect them.
Kano was right about you.
Jarek said.
You don't know when to stop.
You murdered a hostage on a passenger plane.
She was leverage.
She was a civilian.
She was weak.
Jarek threw both blades. One past Jax's shoulder. The other struck the rooftop near his feet, ricocheted from an air conditioning housing, and cut across his side. Jax advanced. Jarek moved quickly, recovering one blade and sending it back toward him. Steel struck Jax's prosthetic arm, throwing sparks into the darkness.
The Black Dragon can be rebuilt.
Jarek said.
Kano freed the strongest of us.
He freed people he could use.
He freed survivors.
No Face and Tasia are dead.
For the first time, Jarek hesitated. Jax closed the distance. Jarek drew a short knife and slashed across the damaged housing of Jax's left arm. The motors stalled. Jax used the arm anyway, driving the metal forearm into Jarek's chest. Jarek stumbled backward and tried to create enough distance to throw the remaining blade. Jax caught him before he could release it. Once Jarek was within reach, the fight ended quickly. Jax struck him across the jaw, seized his coat, and threw him against the rooftop barrier. Jarek tried to stand. Jax hit him again. The former faction leader fell beside the returned boomerang and did not move. Only Tremor and Kano remained. The helicopter lifted from the adjoining roof before Jax could reach it. Kano was not visible inside, but the evacuation route had been prepared for him. Jax transmitted the recovered coordinates.
They point to Sinkiang.
He told Gemini.
We're arranging transport.
She replied.
You're going to China.
JSOC moved Jax under classified travel orders. The operation crossed several diplomatic and legal boundaries. American officials could not openly deploy an armed special operations commander into Xinjiang to pursue a fugitive through an archaeological site. The mission was therefore kept small. Jax traveled with forged technical credentials, limited weapons, replacement batteries for his prostheses, and a communications package hidden inside survey equipment. A transport aircraft delivered him to a cooperating airfield. From there, a covert ground team moved him toward the ruins. Sinkiang stood abandoned beneath a hostile sky. Wind carried dust through collapsed streets and across the exposed foundations of the oasis city. Sections had been excavated by archaeologists. Others had been torn open by smugglers searching for artifacts and concealed chambers. Fragments of fragile manuscripts had once been recovered from the site. Now their storage rooms had been emptied, and fresh vehicle tracks crossed areas supposedly closed to modern traffic. Jax followed Kano's trail into the ruins. He expected another Black Dragon base. Instead, he found an ancient underground complex. Stone stairs descended beneath the remains of a temple. Counterweight doors, drainage channels, and ventilation shafts had allowed people to move through the structure centuries earlier. The mechanisms were not magical. They were examples of careful engineering preserved by the dry climate and restored by modern smugglers. Black Dragon workers had installed generators, electric lamps, cables, and reinforced supports. Pools of groundwater reflected the weak light along the stone walls, making the passage appear to shimmer. The hidden route had become part of a covert transportation corridor extending beyond China's borders. Tremor guarded its entrance. He had placed explosive charges along support columns and faulted sections of rock. The charges could close the passage behind Kano, crush pursuing teams, and destroy evidence of the route. Jax entered the central chamber. Tremor activated the first detonator. The explosion shook dust from the ceiling. A section of wall collapsed behind Jax, blocking the path through which he had entered. Tremor stepped from behind a reinforced barrier. He was a broad, heavily built man wearing demolition armor and carrying a compact rifle.
Kano said you'd come alone.
He said.
He knew me well enough to set the warehouse trap.
He knows anger makes men predictable.
Tremor fired. Jax crossed behind a stone support as bullets struck the wall. Another explosive charge detonated beneath the floor, throwing him onto his back. The chamber trembled. Cracks spread through the ceiling. Tremor had designed the fight so that every attempt to reach him would trigger another collapse. Jax moved carefully, identifying the wires connecting the charges. He shot one detonator box and tore a second cable from the wall. Tremor triggered another explosion manually. Stone blocks fell between them. Jax climbed over the debris. The blast had damaged his communication system and cracked the casing around his right wrist. Warning lights flashed across both prostheses. Tremor abandoned his rifle when Jax reached him. He fought with a demolition hammer, using its reinforced handle as a close weapon. The first strike hit Jax's shoulder. The second struck the damaged left arm and shut down the remaining fingers. Jax drove forward anyway. Tremor was strong, but he had relied on explosives to control the ground. At close range, he could no longer detonate the chamber without killing himself. Jax trapped the hammer beneath one prosthetic arm and struck Tremor with the other. The Black Dragon militant tried to reach a final detonator fixed to his vest. Jax caught the device and crushed it. Tremor drove his head into Jax's face. Jax answered with a reinforced fist to the chest. The blow threw Tremor against a cracked support. Stone collapsed around him. Jax pulled him free before the ceiling came down, but Tremor's injuries were already fatal. The fiercely loyal Black Dragon enforcer died beside the entrance he had been ordered to protect. Jax had defeated the last of Kano's freed prisoners. Beyond Tremor lay the route Kano had used. Gemini reached Jax one final time through the damaged radio.
Do not enter yet.
He said.
The Special Mission Task Force is moving toward your position.
How long?
We can't give you a safe estimate. We don't know where that corridor emerges, how stable it is, or whether communications will survive once you cross the next section.
Kano's already ahead.
Jax, we may lose contact entirely.
He checked the tunnel. Black Dragon equipment had been moved through it recently. Tire marks and drag patterns led into the darkness. Waiting would give Kano time to complete whatever he had planned.
I'm bringing him back.
Jax said.
Major.
I promised.
There was a pause. Gemini understood what promise he meant.
Come home.
He said. Jax entered the smuggling corridor. The route beneath Xinjiang was not one impossible tunnel stretching across the Asian continent. It was the first concealed section of a larger criminal system. The underground passage led to a buried depot beyond the ruins. From there, the Black Dragon had established a chain of caves, abandoned roads, hidden fuel points, corrupt checkpoints, and protected transport vehicles extending westward. Jax followed the route alone. He found abandoned trucks, empty camps, and guards left behind to destroy evidence. Stolen manifests and coded markings confirmed that Kano had used the corridor to move weapons and fugitives across several jurisdictions. The journey eventually carried Jax into Afghanistan. The country had been scarred by years of war. Shattered villages stood beside mined roads. Fortified mountain passes controlled movement between isolated valleys. Armed groups competed for weapons, territory, and foreign money. Kano had made agreements with several of them. Militants opened fire as soon as they identified Jax as a foreign intruder emerging from the Chinese route. He moved through abandoned compounds and damaged settlements, following vehicles connected to Kano's convoy. He fought men armed with Soviet rifles, machine guns, and weapons supplied through the Black Dragon. For the first time, Jax understood that Kano's ambitions extended far beyond organized crime. The Black Dragon was connecting arms traffickers, extremists, smugglers, and mercenary groups across several nations. Kano intended to control the hidden routes between them and sell access to anyone capable of paying. At the center of the operation was the Eye of Chitian. The eye was an ancient gold and lapis ceremonial medallion recovered from a nomadic burial near Tilia Teep. A deep red stone had been set into its center, giving the object the appearance of a brilliant jewel when light passed through it. The medallion was valuable as an antiquity. Its real importance came from what later owners had added to it. Engraved symbols around its rim corresponded with markings used by generations of guides, smugglers, caravan operators, and intelligence couriers. Microscopic alterations concealed route references, water locations, protected contacts, and entrances to passages running between Afghanistan and Western China. Some information had been added recently. The Eye had become a physical cipher key for an entire covert transportation network. Kano believed that controlling it would make the Black Dragon untouchable. Jax followed his trail toward a fortified compound built around another clandestine passage. Inside, red emergency lights illuminated the central chamber. Kano stood beside the Eye of Chitian. The medallion had been mounted upright while Black Dragon technicians photographed and copied its markings. Beneath the red light, the central stone shone brilliantly. Kano smiled when Jax entered.
I'll admit it.
He said.
I didn't think you'd get past Tremor.
Jax looked around the chamber. No Face, Tasia, Jarek, and Tremor were absent. Kano read the question in his face.
They weren't my partners.
He said.
They were delays.
You broke them out to die.
I broke them out to slow you down.
They trusted you.
Kano laughed.
No Face trusted explosives. Tasia trusted herself. Jarek wanted my organization. Tremor was too stupid to want anything except orders.
Their deaths mean nothing to you.
Do they mean something to you?
Jax thought of Sanchez and the soldiers outside the warehouse.
They'll help put you away.
You still think this ends in a courtroom?
Kano lifted the eye from its mount.
With this, I control every useful route between here and China. Weapons move where I say. People cross where I say. Governments can close every road they know about, and I'll sell the roads they don't.
He placed the medallion inside a protective case attached to his belt.
You're going to be my first prisoner.
Jax tightened the reinforced grip of his myoelectric hands. He had crossed 2 nations, survived Kano's ambushes, and fought through the Black Dragon's strongest operatives. He had not come to kneel.
I came to arrest you.
Kano drew a long fighting knife and a compact automatic pistol. He fired first. Jax moved behind the stone pedestal as bullets struck the chamber walls. Kano circled toward the exit, firing whenever Jax exposed himself. He fought without rules or restraint. When the pistol emptied, he threw it and attacked with the knife. The blade cut across Jax's vest and struck the damaged housing of his left arm. The prosthetic shut down completely. Kano saw the fingers lock in place.
Running out of machinery?
Jax struck him with the disabled arm. The weight of the metal still sent Kano backward. Kano recovered and drove the knife beneath a protective plate near Jax's right elbow. Electrical sparks escaped from the joint. Jax's hand opened involuntarily. Kano kicked him in the chest. Jax fell beside the pedestal. For an instant he saw the warehouse street again. Burning vehicles. Sanchez lying beside his radio. Soldiers murdered because Kano wanted time to search for an artifact. Kano saw the anger in his face and smiled.
That's why I always get away.
He said.
You stop thinking.
He attacked again. Jax did not. He allowed Kano to believe the anger had taken control. He waited until the criminal moved within reach, then trapped the knife arm beneath his disabled prosthesis. Kano tried to pull free. Jax shifted his weight, broke Kano's balance, and drove him into the stone mount. The eye struck the floor inside its protective case. Kano reached for it. Jax caught him by the back of the jacket and threw him away. Kano produced a second concealed blade. Jax blocked it with his damaged right forearm, ignoring the warning alarm from the mechanism, and drove his forehead into Kano's face. The metal plate around Kano's eye cracked. His optical system failed. Kano slashed blindly. Jax stepped inside the attack and struck him in the ribs. A second blow drove him to his knees. Kano tried to rise. Jax remembered Sanchez's final transmission. He struck Kano again. The Black Dragon leader collapsed at his feet. For once, he had nowhere left to run. Jax recovered the Eye of Chition and restrained Kano with steel cable taken from the equipment surrounding the display. Defeating him created another problem. Jax was stranded in Afghanistan. The route through which he had entered had been compromised by fighting, demolition work, and Black Dragon reinforcements. His radio could not reach Gemini across the distance and terrain separating them. Kano regained consciousness while Jax examined the medallion.
You don't know how to read it,
he said. Jax held the eye beneath the red emergency light. The illumination passed through the central stone and revealed faint differences in the engraved gold. Lines that appeared decorative under ordinary light formed route markers when viewed through the red filter. Kano stopped smiling. Jax rotated the medallion. The markings corresponded with symbols carved into sections of the chamber wall. When aligned correctly, they identified a concealed release built into the stone. Jax activated it. A narrow exit opened behind the compound. The passage led toward another section of the Black Dragon corridor and eventually back toward China. Jax hauled Kano upright. The criminal tried to resist. Jax tightened the steel cable.
You wanted me as your first prisoner.
He said.
Start walking.
The return journey was slow. Jax's prosthetic arms were badly damaged. The left no longer functioned, and the right operated intermittently. He carried replacement batteries but lacked the tools needed to repair severed internal wiring. Kano had injuries of his own. Jax dragged or carried him through the worst sections of the passage, refusing to leave him behind. The eye guided them through hidden storage chambers, old caravan paths, and concealed exits marked with symbols Kano's men had copied but never fully understood. Several Black Dragon guards attempted to intercept them. Jax used the terrain, captured weapons, and Kano himself to force their surrender or bypass their positions. Eventually, the passage returned them to Chinese territory. Jax climbed onto open ground with Kano bound beside him. He raised the damaged radio. For several seconds there was only static. Then a voice came through the receiver.
Major Briggs, identify.
Jax smiled.
Gemini, you sound worried.
The relief in her answer was immediate.
You disappeared across an international border with no support and a failing transmitter.
I said I'd come back.
Do you have Kano?
Jax looked at the Black Dragon leader sitting in the dirt with his hands restrained.
He's right here.
A JSOC recovery team reached them later. Kano was taken into American custody through a classified transfer arrangement. The Eye of Chetion was secured as evidence, and intelligence specialists began decoding the information concealed in its markings. The recovered data exposed routes, contacts, weapons depots, and criminal alliances stretching across Central Asia. Jax had avenged Lieutenant Sanchez and the soldiers murdered at the warehouse. No Face, Tasia, Jarek, and Tremor were dead. The eye had been recovered. Kano was in chains. For the moment, Major Jackson Briggs had won. The victory did not end the Black Dragon. Kano's organization was too widely dispersed to disappear with one captured leader. Cells remained active throughout several countries. Arms traffickers, thieves, extortionists, mercenaries, and assassins still used the connections he had established. The Afghan network would eventually pull JSOC into a multinational counterterrorism conflict, extending far beyond any ordinary criminal investigation. Kano would escape again. 2 years later, in 1992, a battle-tested army captain named Sonya Blade would lead the pursuit. Kano would draw her toward a private island controlled by Shang Tsung, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor and underground fight promoter who had already recruited the Lin K assassin called Sub-Zero. Kano would go to the island intending to steal a hidden fortune. Sonya would follow him. When Shang Tsung's men captured members of her unit, she would be forced to enter the invitation-only tournament being assembled there. That tournament would be called Mortal Kombat. But in 1990, those events still lay ahead. For now, Kano sat beneath armed guard aboard an American transport aircraft. The Eye of Chetion rested inside a secured evidence case. The corridor connecting China, Afghanistan, and the Black Dragon's international network had been exposed. And as the aircraft carried them home, Jackson Briggs allowed himself one satisfied smile. Kano was alive. Kano was defeated. And this time, Kano was the prisoner,